Congressman, I want to read you this headline, and I want you to react to it. From the Daily Beast, a sinking ship. Arizona docs say Ducey steered state in the COVID-19 surge. It's more death porn, right?
Yeah. I'm always baffled by stuff like that. I look at numbers, and the only thing I would tell you is the only way that's even true at all is if somehow the Department of Health Service numbers that they're putting out there are wrong. I mean, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any reason to think that they're materially wrong. I mean, I've got problems with some of their numbers, the way they report them, et cetera. You look at stuff and it doesn't seem to match up. For example, yesterday the death count for a certain age group was 177, but then today, it was 1777, and it increased to that one demographic alone increased to 1787. But the overall death rate reported new deaths reported was only 90. So how does one demographic exceed that? So I mean, I look at the numbers constantly to see what's going on there, and I'm baffled by that. And now are there anecdotal stories of things that could go better? Yes, but there are also anecdotal stories of things where people are doing well. And when you look at this, I'm looking and it says that our overall hospital bed availability for things like ICU is still at 10%. The bed availability for general beds is 13%. We're only using less than half of the emergency department beds. Are we having to move people around a little bit? That's what I'm hearing. But again, that's anecdotal and not reflected in this data that we see here.
So, Congressman Biggs, what's the best way forward? Before we talk about schools, I want to ask you that because lots of people have different opinions about what to do. So you obviously are getting updates on this. You're looking at the numbers, as you mentioned. What next steps should we take here in the state of Arizona?
Well, I think the steps we have to take is I think we should open up, advocate for masks. I think what the governor in Georgia has done is excellent. He's basically encouraging everyone to follow CDC guidelines, but leaving it up to the private business and individuals to make those choices. That's what happens in a free society. You examine risks, you take the risks and weigh those risks and act accordingly. And if there's a store that I want to go into that requires need to wear a mask, I do that. Mm-hmm. I think those are the steps that you have to take, and I think we also have to make sure that there's enough PPE and make sure that logistically we're there. Supposedly there were surge beds that were going to be available. Are those surge beds available? Let's make sure everything's still in place in case something happens. But I'm just telling you, I'm looking at the data, and the governor's office was kind of happy. They felt like maybe it looked like it was flattening a bit, and that's what it looks like to me as well. But we have to see.
And that's it, right? We have to, like you said, it's refreshing to actually hear common sense come out of a member of Congress. So I appreciate that, Congressman Biggs. Just saying, look, weigh your own risks and determine what's best for you and your family, and then take those steps. And that can apply to schools, too, because, look, the science says kids are not suffering the same way people in nursing homes are. And there's arguments going back and forth about what to do. California today decided they're going to keep their schools to do what do they call distance learning now, at-home learning. What are you advocating for, Congressman, in the state of Arizona? Is it time to open the schools?
Yeah, I mean, I'm advocating for what's happened throughout Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, other places in Asia, what's happened in Europe, and that's to open schools back up. I mean, the data and science is very clear that kids, particularly under age 15, they don't seem to get COVID very, very often. It's almost statistically insignificant. Those that do recover quickly. The number of fatalities there are far below the number of fatalities that you would have in a normal influenza season. You can see that at CDC's own numbers. You can look at Arizona's own numbers, where if you add up the percentage of every other demographic, it's just like it's almost 100%. And there's this little bitty bit of like 1/100%, something like that. It's very, very low. I don't want to say that that's the exact number because I don't have it in front of me. That it would be the fatality rate for kids under age 15, actually under age 20, and that would be you would anticipate that most of those kids have additional comorbidities to them already.
Correct. And that seems to be the biggest issue with COVID-19 is the number of conditions that anyone has, whatever the age group is. But neither way, there's a lot of fear going on in Arizona, Texas, across the entire country. Fear that I'm sure that you're hearing in your office, probably even from some teachers. We played a clip yesterday from a teacher who I believe teaches in Gilbert, who says there's no circumstance in which she'll feel safe going back to the classroom. How do you combat that to try to get schools open if several teachers just either aren't going to show up or are too scared to show up or don't want to show up?
I mean, well, that's the problem. I mean, we have to assess the risk. Most teachers are going to be in the 20 to 44 demographic, which has like a 0.002% fatality rate. I mean, that's almost statistically insignificant itself. So you want to mitigate risk. You want them to feel comfortable. If they are in a risky demographic, you want to address that. But you shouldn't be saying and foreclosing a rational option. In fact, not only a rational option, the rational option out of fear. You should say, well, let's see if there's a way to mitigate some of the concerns that are out there rather than just shutting this thing down. I mean, look, you've got some weird things that go on. I would ask that teacher, do you go in the grocery store? Have you been to a restaurant? What have you been doing the last 5 months? And I look at Albany in New York. They're going to provide for 100,000 kids on daycare, but they're not going to open up schools. That's the type of thing where you look and you say, hey, how does that work? How does that work? It seems so inconsistent to me.
I heard Nancy Pelosi say something similar to that yesterday, in that when you guys get back to Washington, if that's even going to happen, I'm not even sure. That's one of the first bills that she wants to push out there is a bill to open childcare so that parents can go back to work. And that's the thing I thought of. I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. So it's okay for the kids to go to childcare but not go to school. But you have one party obviously invested in that for some reason, the other party. So have you had any conversations with any of the fellow Democrats about that?
No, I mean, some of them are voting in their committees from boats because they're out on boats and stuff. They're not going back to vote.
Yeah. Like Greg Stanton.
Just saying. Yeah, just saying. but I mean, so look, so if we go back there and they have this whole thing, they stick us in these big rooms and we're socially distant. At one point, I had this desk and I was like out in the middle of nowhere. And I was told that if I didn't put a mask on, I mean, nobody's around me. I was told if I didn't put a mask on, that I risked getting an ethics complaint filed against me. That's how bizarre that place has gotten back there. And so I've actually talked to a doctor the other day, and I was asking him about this notion of masks and social distancing, and I said that some folks where they came into contact with someone who had come into contact with someone who had been sick and everything. I said, but they wore masks. And he said, hey, masks don't matter. It's whether they were socially distant. The real key is how close were you for how long. If you're within 6 feet of each other for 15 minutes, they view that as being a high-risk situation, and you should go get tested. And I said, so I tell them to get tested. Yeah. I said, if they test no, what should happen? He said, they should still quarantine for 14 days. And you begin to see that this is absolute hysteria, panic, fear, instead of saying, can we deal with this in a rational way, just by looking at the data, science, and the numbers. Even on masks, I mean, there's literally hundreds of cases on masks. I saw a piece just yesterday. A guy says, you know what, N95, why it's called N95 because it stops only 95% of the bacteria, and that a cloth mask doesn't do anything. And that is consistent with every study that I've looked at, and I've looked at quite a few since this began. So, Rob, yeah, I'm just amazed at how immobilized so many of my friends are.
It is. Fear has become a bigger contagion than COVID-19, and that obviously is saying something. And I think the best way to do it is continue to have these conversations that we're having. And I always think that, look, if you treat people like adults, they'll respond like adults. But that's not what's going on in this country, unfortunately. The media is treating everyone like a scared child, and so many politicians are doing the same thing. We appreciate the fact that you're not.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rob. And you're right. I mean, I think we've all known friends that I've had friends that have passed. I have friends that have had difficult times, and I've had a lot of friends who didn't even know they had it. They were totally asymptomatic. They go get a test and had antibodies. But that's another thing. We're counting the antibody test as a positive case being reported, and you have no idea when the person had the COVID. So, I mean,
lots of
even
questions.
Our numbers are a little bit skewed.
But yeah, we don't know where people are getting it, how they're getting it. Was it a super spreader event? Was it at a restaurant? So yeah, there's millions of questions we don't know answers to, but we're acting like it's around every corner, and we keep running and hiding. Congressman Andy Biggs, appreciate the time as always. We look forward to talking to you again real soon.